so much. How many of you guys love your phones that you have with you right now? Love it. Do you love it? If you dropped it in a gutter today, how devastated would you be? Or do you have some way to re-upload all your information to another device? So, do you love your device, or do you love the experience that it creates? So it's kind of interesting to think about breaking this apart. And how many of you have a device or something that used to work that doesn't work anymore, but you keep it for purely sentimental reasons? Anybody? Yeah, it's interesting because we want to understand how we can become more connected with the experiences that we actually create. There was a recent African study that was released actually last week by McKinsey, and they said that in Africa, 85% of the people that were being asked, they would accept advertising on mobile phones. So it's really interesting that in the past decade or more, we've been looking at other cultures to see what kind of trends are hitting, mostly, of course, South Korea and Japan, to understand how America can really play in. A decade ago, America was 67% penetrated for mobile devices overall. Today, there's another stat that's come out. I guess it's almost a couple years old now, but basically, Japan is at 90% penetration for what they're calling 3G devices or smartphones. Korea is only 75%, and I'm sure it's a little higher now, for 3G devices or smartphones. But does anyone have a guess where America's at in terms of penetration for 3G or smartphones? Anybody? 30%? It's 41% as of this study, which was completed, I believe, at the end of 2009. But it's edging up, and the point here is that we still have a lot of room to grow. So we've been looking at other trends and cultures to sort of understand what is going to affect us today. And I don't know if you remember the big MVNO push of 2005 where America was going to rule, multiple virtual network operators. And we didn't quite make it. Disney tried, ESPN tried. We all tried to connect emotionally on a content level with customers, but it didn't quite work. And it was only recently, of course, since the advent of Google, Android, iPhone, to really set the pace for America as an innovator and a leader in this area. So we're here, and it's very exciting to be with you guys today because you guys are setting the pace for the future. So most companies come to us and they say, you know, we really want to create an addictive experience. Has that ever happened? They want it to be sticky. Sticky used to be the big word. How can we get eyeballs? How can we get market share? How can we create addiction? So saw this, my husband found this actually about this devolution that we're experiencing where we start standing up or down and then we get to this point. And now we're kind of like this all the time. We're not even connecting with people. And it's great that we're here today, we're talking face to face. But I think that I want to challenge you as developers to not create this kind of experience. We had a babysitter recently in the first 30 minutes. She was just texting and I said, how, can I politely ask you not to do that? I want you to connect with the kids that you're with right now. And so it's kind of merging between this addictive behavior and understanding how we can get out of looking at our phones. And even when we're with people at a party, everyone's just staring at devices. So understanding addiction and addictive behavior is just a starting point. And, it's nice to get into this realm of fun and pleasure, and that's part of this connection that we're trying to create with the apps and the services and the products that we're providing. But I think the thing that we can actually control and that we've found that we can control through research and understanding your customer needs a little bit better is this idea of ritual. My friend Lee Durst talks about ritual a lot and ritualized behavior. And it's very important to understand the culture that you're developing for and the behavior that they have. Briefly, in the second keynote, they were talking about machine-to-machine communication. And it's kind of interesting because as we talk about home automation, some of the studies that have come out have really shown that there's a big difference. What we think is a home, 2,000 square feet, 2,500 square feet on average in the United States. In Asia, the average home size is about 400 square feet by comparison. So the wireless signals and the things that we're creating that we think are so ubiquitous here are actually going to be completely unusable in other countries and other cultures because we perceive of these things a little bit differently. The same goes for this idea of home automation and potentially something that sticks onto your refrigerator that gives your kids notes and things to do, whereas in other cultures, kitchens and the refrigerator are used in a completely different way. So once again, the industry's turned and we're finally turning to America to understand how to set the pace for what we're doing, so it's a big responsibility. Moving into devotion, this is my car. Most of the time, I love this car, but what was interesting is we just completed a study for one of our clients looking at East and West cultures and driving experiences and using, driving devices and in-car devices and also external devices to understand how to navigate. And what was really fascinating is that the context that people were in completely dictated their behavior. So if someone was in a stressful driving moment where there were other cars and there was traffic to navigate, their behavior and their experience completely changed. And so we are no longer designing, as we know, for desktop-based experiences. We are designing for movement and for context. And we need to be thinking about how will this app, how will this service, how will this product be used in this environment? And what do I need to think about? So a friend of mine, Tara LeMay, who does a lot of forecasting, builds a grid. And I've talked about this a lot in the past, where there's human-to-human communication is the top tier, and we've got that down pretty well. Then there's machine-to-machine communication, which binary and languages are working, and again, taking a new level, as mentioned with the Best Buy talk. Where we've been prior to the 2.0 revolution is this human to machine communication and understanding how to enter information and interact with the device. But where we're really going is machine to human. And that's why it's so interesting and why now is the time to think about culture. And this term I use, ethnography, it's really hanging out with your customers and understanding what their true needs are at a whole different level. Because we are now in the era where things are already usable. Things are working for the most part. And we're slowly moving up that evolving Maslow's hierarchy of needs to a point of wonder and exploration. And that's why this is such an exciting time. And machine-to-human communication is really where it's at and why we are here at such a pivotal moment. So just briefly, we do a lot of research at Goto Media. And one of the things that I really like doing is understanding this concept of the difference between what people think and how people actually live. So I've asked this, if you've seen me speak before, I've asked you this before, forgive me, but how many of you guys wash your hands when you go to the bathroom? Afterwards, rather? Yeah? So that's a focus group. That's what you think you would do in the situation, but when we actually put cameras covertly in there, or as Seinfeld would say, only 4 out of 5 people wash their hands when they come out of the bathroom. That's what people actually do, and that's why observation and contextual observation, deep dive interviews, all of this is so important, and it baffles me and astonishes me how little people think they need to do of this because they think they already know all the answers. So the other aspect to this, which is really interesting, is that there's practical aspects of things that you can identify and ask questions about and understand. And then there's emotional. So I'm a big advocate of gathering data from wherever you can and using that to understand both the emotional and the practical aspect of the user experience and that crux. But please do gather and understand what this data is, and using your gut is part of it, but really understanding how to get beyond usable is important. And we do a lot of usability testing because although we'd like to say we're past that usable, functional aspect, there are so many products and services that still have room to grow in that area. So something that's been extremely exciting for me as a practitioner in this field is this combination of understanding of engineering methods that have been in place since the 1960s. Now, most of this comes out of Japan and Asia, but you may have heard of it, quality function deployment, QFD, the Kano method, about not just exceeding expectations, but making sure you're mapping to people's actual expectations and then trying to meet them. KANSEI is a method that was introduced in the 1970s and 80s in Japan. That's all about pleasure and the emotional connection you have with products. And it was introduced to the US in the 1990s, but it hasn't really caught on, maybe for cultural reasons. But that is the method that we're using the most to combine these contextual studies, gather words, cluster them, and understand what are the unmet needs, what are the desires, and how do we translate these into product requirements and actually schedule for a roadmap for deployment. So sensory engineering is a very important topic, I believe, and it's also used, terms being used are emotional usability, and I encourage you to look it up and understand how you can sort of merge it with the current development cycles that you have. It's, I think, the new Agile. Agile meets UCD, I believe KANSEI and Kano, and these methods are really going to mix into the user experiences that we create in the future. So KANSEI is just kind of part of the whole picture here. And, you know, we've understand demographics, we've gotten into psychographics, but really where we're going is emotion and context. So how are you feeling? I'm going to skip past a few of these. I think that the biggest piece here to take a look at is that you have your practical and your emotional needs, and that decision-making for people buying your apps, downloading them, even usage over time, is going to be dictated by a number of things. And yes, Super AMOLED screen is important in high-resolution imagery, but in the end, what is the emotional impact that it has for you? Can you share it with your family easily? Are you able to tell a story? So there's always going to be this combination of emotional versus practical information. So we've been tasked with getting beyond known by a lot of our global clients and helping them understand. This is a video that we produced.
The main thing I'm passionate about is model making, of course, because it's something I've been doing for a really long time.
I write every day, and my goal right now is to get published in the New Yorker. There's no higher honor than getting published in the New Yorker.
I saw an article where the makeup was just fabulous, and how do I get to that point? I don't want to work at a store for the rest of my life, but it's the easiest thing right now.
Sometimes clients are just like, shoot me an image, and they can see it right there, right now. And I can do video, same thing.
I'm on Facebook. I'm on there all day. I'm not actively engaged in it all day, but it's like, it's kind of on all day. I want to take the 14L up at 24th and Mission. There's one in 1 minute, one in 6 minutes, and one in 20 minutes.
I still live paycheck to paycheck, so, you know, when I buy something large, it takes up a huge chunk of that everyday paycheck. The brands that I choose, I pick because of their ability to be used in a variety of ways. I think it reflects my personality in the sense that you can't just wake up one day and do something. You have to have put effort into it, and everything is a step. You know, so I've always done really well with brands that have steps in their process.
You know, this is good design. It's nice. It's good. But this is way better. Why? I don't know. I think it's just simpler.
It feels vast. This huge dark space. It feels infinite.
It's the tiny stuff that changes everything.
I just get like flushed with emotion, and it just kind of overwhelms me, and
So we've been doing this type of research where we follow people home for a couple days. This was done in a week. You don't have to videotape it in high res and make a movie out of it. But what we did do is form ritualized patterns, and we understood contextualized behavior. And it was really great because it was very simple to understand what some of these needs were and how you could take it over time and actually map what Brendan goes through as he goes through his day and understand what products and services that you're creating and how it actually fits into that. We worked with an international hotel company at one point, and they had their clients, you know, broken down into luxury travelers, budget travelers, business travelers, and students. And that made sense. But after we completed our study, we created a whole nother behavioral aspect to the way that people worked through products and services. And they were the people that were direct to brand. They were the people that were budget, you know, and thrifty. And so you could have old ways of thinking about how to break your customer audience base up, but there's a whole new way that you need to look at it, and that's through behavior and mapping. So getting into this desired outcome of I wish. So anyway, you know, in kind of closing, there are a lot of new methods, including this D-Scout, which is sort of a mobile ethnography tool that allows you to do this type of research fairly quickly, and taking these words and understanding your customers' behavior and how you're shaping their identity, and how this is working into both public, which is huge, which is connection, and everything going into all of the social media, to private, making sure that you're making them look cool and feel important and feel like they're current. So, I want to just leave you with this thought, and that's that you never know exactly how people are going to use your product or service. And so it's important that you get out there and ask the questions. So thank you very much.